everybody. This is Ben Bowman. I'm the Tritagonist. It's kind of weird saying that, but this is my band, my music, my vision. I'm the sole member. Uh, yeah, something like that. But I wanted to take some time to give like an explanation of all the songs and the lyrics and stuff that I'm talking about, the concept and story. And so this is number zero because it's not about any one particular song and yeah, in particular. But this is about kind of the recording process and the background of what was kind of going on in my life uh, and how all this kind of came about in the first place. So um, we'll start in January of 2016. And at that point, life was doing okay. Like, seemed like I was getting somewhere kind of in my personal life, um, as opposed to like a year or two before that it was just kind of a dark period, and I'll just kind of leave it with that. But what happened was one day I sort of had this idea, I guess, just pop in my head, that hey, I should write an album and it be a concept album. And it's an idea I've always kind of flirted with, but something about this, it was just kind of like this unction, or it just seemed to kind of come out of nowhere. But um, honestly, yeah, I didn't want to do it. I knew it was going to take a lot of work and a lot of time and a lot of energy. And yeah, I wasn't interested. So I just kind of put it to the side, or, ignored the idea altogether. But in the back of my head, I first off, I wanted this to be, metal, weird music, because like I grew up, um, like high school, college, and beyond, just into hardcore and punk rock and, like Solid State records, Tooth and Nail records, like collectively, they were my jam. They, in a lot of ways, still are. Um, I have a lot of respect for, like Brandon Ebel for starting those labels and wanting, to make quality music, in the underground scene. And so I've always gravitated towards that sort of aesthetic, um, and felt, especially in like Christian music, quote unquote, um, there was just something genuine about those bands and those labels that I just didn't find a lot of anywhere else. Um, and so I wanted to make that kind of music, but at the same time thought, like lyrically, it would be cool if I could write some praise and worship songs that could be played in a church service or something like that. Um, not necessarily all the time, but it was in my brain, I guess, that, it would be cool to write some music that talks about my faith and how that, I guess has shaped me and affected me and whatnot. Um, and the Christian contemporary market is an industry. Um, I don't want to go into a whole lot of detail of like why it is an industry, but it is, and it's not a very good one in my opinion. Um, there is a target audience, a target market, and a guy like me doesn't fit into that mold. It just That's just how it is. Um, but even lyrically, when it comes to a lot of church music, Christian music, it just it none of it. Well, I wouldn't say none of it, but very little of it truly resonates with me. I mean, you crack open the book of Psalms and you're going to find basically anything and everything within the human condition, emotions all over the spectrum. Um, I mean, just you don't find that in the CCM market. It's all, positive and encouraging, and that's just not realistic to human experience. Um, like, do I really need to explain that more? But besides that, like, there's not a whole lot of story or context behind a lot of the content. And so, I remember reading books in college or articles or whatever about, like, for instance, Darlene Zschech wrote that, Shout to the Lord song that was huge back in the, I guess, late 90s or whatever. Um, like, apparently that song she wrote while she was like dealing with some serious financial hardship. Or I remember taking a humanities class in college and learning that there was apparently some particular hymn that Charles Wesley penned, basically hiding from a mob uh, who wanted to kill him and his brother, John Wesley, after they had preached at some like crusade sort of thing. Um, Crowd wanted to kill him, completely pissed off. So they hid in a ditch and he wrote apparently one of his more famous hymns. I mean, that's pretty powerful stuff. And you don't get a lot of that from, modern church music. Um, I mean, heck, Amazing Grace apparently was written by a guy who had just like converted to Christianity and, he was overcoming alcoholism. You know, that's powerful stuff too. Knowing that context makes it, you know, that much more effective as, I guess, a witness, if you want to call it that. Um, and I mean, there's a lot of songs like that. I think, what was it? It Is Well With My Soul, Dude wrote it on a boat um, after, like his pretty much hit all of his kids drowned to death, on a ship. And he wrote that, after that event. Pretty powerful stuff. Don't get that in, you know, Christian market kind of stuff. So I figured if I was going to write something, I would want it to be heartfelt like that, to have some sort of narrative and some sort of context behind it. Um, Even though, like, initially I had no idea what that would be. Um, and also, I didn't want it to be um, autobiographical. I didn't want to be solipsistic about it. The main character, if you will, the narrator, yeah, he loosely represents me, but I figured, hey, I want to be a little more monomythic with it and kind of have this universal quality to the character. And so, that was important as well. But anyway, um, I didn't do anything about this music for, I don't know, 6 months until, well, even 6 months later, I was still on the fence with it. Basically, what happened was there was this guy who, he was, I guess, a prophet or whatever. He travels around to different churches or whatever and seemed like actually a pretty legitimate dude. Um, and basically, the guy stood up and said to me that, I was going to write new music and come up with new sounds on my guitar and stuff like that. But I didn't take anything he was saying seriously. Um, and like the strange thing was, at the time that this was happening, like some of my friends were having these like weird dreams and stuff too, dealing with like me and music. And, I just put it in the back of my head. I wasn't ready. And so by that summer of 2016, some of you who may be watching this may remember, basically, I wrote a book and was posting it on Facebook that I, kind of tongue in cheek called my 95 Theses. And the whole thing was dealing with this woman that I loved and uh, pretty much wanted to marry. Um, and a big part of that too was another woman who is was the closest thing I've ever had to a mentor. Uh, she went to bat for me in so many ways and believed in me in ways that very, very few people in my life ever have. Um, and she was battling cancer as well. Um, and so all that stuff that I was writing, like, it pretty much pissed the woman I wanted to marry off. It pushed her away. Um, and it got to a place where I thought it, it was just done. That we would, remain friends and everything, but it was just, I came against a brick wall, so to speak, and seemed like I was supposed to just kind of give up on it. Um, which for like a year up until that point in dealing with this woman, there were numerous times when I felt like I'd come up against a wall and wanted to give up. And every time something would happen, like weird stuff would happen, that it was almost like God Himself was coming down and saying, "No, not yet. Keep going." And so I did, but I got to this certain point where I was like, "This is it," and I've got to live with that. So I kind of made that decision, one day, and then that following weekend, really just a like handful of days after that, um, went to church, and there was this dude who was kind of loosely involved in our church who was preaching that day, and he ended up basically prophesying to every individual in that church at the end of the service. And I think, like the second to last person he came to. And basically, what he said to me was that I was going to write new music. And he added specifically that it was going to deal with a lot of relationship issues that I was at that moment, you know, trying to overcome and dealing with, and that the music would tie into that and it would, help a lot of people. Um, and so for the first time, I was like, okay, maybe I need to take this thing seriously. And like the funny thing about his saying that was my mentor was there um, in the room as well, and she had her grandson with her, and her grandson didn't know anything about the situation. She hadn't told him anything. I hadn't really spoken to him about anything. He was like this young, I think he was like 14 or something at the time. And while this guy was like prophesying this stuff to me, the kid kept hearing like, I'm not going to say the word, um, but basically a word that kind of corresponded with her name and some stars and just weird stuff. And it seemed clear to me, it seemed clear to my mentor that it wasn't over yet. But in the meantime, I figured, hey, I needed to start writing this music. And so right after that, I started writing the lyrics and, jot notes down on my iPhone or on my computer and start slowly putting the story and the narrative together. It took me, I don't know, like a month and a half or so to come up with like a rough draft for it. And I sent it to my mentor right away, and she had read a lot of my stuff from before. And, she told me that it was pretty much my best work to date. And also, I was, picking up my guitar, sit, after work or whatever for an hour or two and just start writing guitar licks and, you know, write tablatures out, record stuff on my iPhone, send it to her, see what she thought. And, I did that for a number of months. Around Christmas or New Year's, went out to, Guitar Center, bought the DAW that I currently use, bought Studio One software, and started recording um, just guitar parts and slowly putting the thing together. I mean, to write all the music, um, do like initial guitars, bass, vocal, like initial takes. It took about a year, um, but it was a slow process, but just steady. Um, Unfortunately, around well, it was February of 2017 because I started actually like recording for real, like January of 2017, and it took me a couple of months to really kind of find my groove with that and learn the software and you know get the kinks out of it. And there were plenty of kinks to get, like uh, shorts and guitar chords, or in like my headphones had like a short in it, and I had no idea. I just figured that like something was wrong with my system or whatever, and it's kind of embarrassing, but it took a while just to figure little things like that out. Um, but anyway, February of 2017, my mentor passed away um, after battling cancer for a couple of years, and like it sucked. There's no really good way of saying it. I I was asked to deliver her eulogy and all, and I mean I got through it. I think I did okay, but after that was an extremely dark time because it wasn't just like I didn't feel like I just lost my mentor and my friend, but I also lost. It felt like I had also lost this woman I wanted to marry. Like we weren't on speaking terms whatsoever, and I couldn't accept it. And so I was dealing with all that stuff pretty much the entire time that I was recording these songs. And like I can't stress enough how dark it is, and I'll go into details of that much later on. It's not really the time to talk about that stuff yet, um, but yeah, it was just dark times, and writing and recording this music kind of helped. keep me grounded in this weird way. Um, it gave me something to focus on while I was dealing with grief and depression and just trying to keep myself together and keep my ish together. Um, I ended up having to sit on this music for about 2 years. And the reason being, early on, a buddy of mine, we were gonna record drums. He was gonna be my drummer, but it just never worked out. We could never just get the time to do it. Um, Initially, we were gonna use the church that we were going to at the time, use some of their equipment, which early on I used some basses that were sitting around there, some like microphones that I think were my mentors. She used to play violin, so she kept some like stage mics around for that. Um, but we were gonna use the acoustic drum set, and I figured I'd just plug my computer up to the sound system, and there was also an electronic kit sitting around that I figured, well, maybe we could use that too, but it just never happened. And unfortunately, like, I would prefer to have live drums, obviously, but I don't think I could have pulled it off looking back. I yeah, I don't think I could have pulled it off. I don't think it would have sounded right. So I had to sit on the music for 2 years without drums, and drums was the last thing that I recorded for all this. Um, which supposedly, apparently, whatever in modern metal music, that's kind of become a thing. Is that for some producers they record drums last, but traditionally speaking, you pretty much do drums first. And I kind of see the reason why now. It just works better with timing and everything. Um, so what ended up happening was one day I was on or I was on Facebook and came across a Jared Dines video. He'd come up with some guitar lick and put it out there for drummers to write a line or you know record something for it. And in the video I saw somebody plugged up their like iPad, iPhone, whatever, and played this really sick metal guitar or metal drum uh, thing, from their phone. And I was just like blown away, and I was like, that's what I'm gonna do. And so I downloaded the software, the app, to my phone. And about a year ago, right now, like late 2020, early 2021, I started doing the drums. And yeah, a lot of quantization, a lot of quantizing everything. Um, I can't stress how much I wanted to pull my hair out trying to get the drums right on this. Yeah, it was not fun, but I guess I got through it. So, but initially the lyrics are kind of loosely based on my past, but like I said, not autobiographical. And when it comes to dealing with the woman I wanted to marry and everything, I need to take the time to explain that a lot of these songs kind of took almost like a prophetic meaning for me personally after the fact, and really while I was recording and putting all these songs together. And some of the meaning sort of morphed as well. But I have to stress that this music, none of these songs are specifically about her. But to clarify, a couple of these songs I don't think I could have written if not because of her, if that makes any sense. And I don't want to cause drama because I'm sure she could, potentially if somebody sent her the link to this, she might be get she might get pissed off by me even saying that, which I'm not going to say anything that she's entitled to whatever opinion she has of me and of this, but you know, no resentment. Everything's in the past. But I just have to point out that it is an important part of the subtext or backstory for this album. And it meant a lot to me personally. Um, and so, like, the narrative to the concept album is based on a central unnamed character. And also want to point out, a few years back, I read this book by Charles Williams called The Figure of Beatrice. It's basically a literary study of Dante's work, Inferno and Convivio, and pretty much all of his work that deals with the character of Beatrice. Um, and so Williams pointed out in his literary work that Dante postulated four ways in which a book can be understood. And this was like essentially like a medieval concept for literature. And so, like, those four things, four ways anything could be interpreted is, a literal meaning, an allegorical meaning, a moral meaning, and what was called an anagogical meaning. And so, like, the first one, the literal meaning is, well, it's literal. Um, what else is to say for that? But the other three are a little more allegorical in a sense. So, of course, the second one, the allegorical meaning, applies to intellectual and abstract concepts. Whereas the third one, the moral meaning, obviously deals with the moral and ethical life. Whereas the fourth one, the anagogical meaning, deals with the spiritual and heavenly things. And I would like to add maybe there's perhaps a fifth one that kind of might actually wrap all four kind of together, and that would simply be the personal meaning. And so, in this process of the following videos, going from song to song, I want to discuss all those potential meanings. And so, I guess let's go to the first one.